In a quiet Texas town, a kind-hearted mechanic named Jake spends his days fixing broken things, but never expected a blind date to fix his heart. When he meets Emily, a beautiful young woman in a wheelchair, what starts as a simple meeting turns into a story of courage, kindness, and unexpected love. So sit back, watch till the end, and don't forget to like, share, and tell us where you're watching from. Now let's get started. Jake had always been a simple man with calloused hands and a soft heart. Working long hours at a small auto shop in Dallas, Texas, he found comfort in fixing broken things, machines, engines, anything that needed care. But his own heart had stayed untouched for years. Friends often teased him for being too busy for love, and one day his best friend Mark set him up on a blind date. Jake resisted at first, but eventually gave in. "Just one dinner," he said, unaware that this evening would change his life forever. He arrived at a cozy cafe on Main Street just before sunset. The sky glowed orange, the air smelled faintly of coffee and rain. Jake straightened his denim jacket, nervous but curious. He scanned the tables, expecting a typical date, maybe a shy smile, awkward small talk, and an early goodbye. But as his eyes landed on a young woman by the window, something made him pause. She had chestnut hair, a soft expression, and a gentle aura that instantly drew him in. When she waved at him, Jake smiled back and walked closer. But as he approached, his eyes caught the metallic frame of a wheelchair beside her table. His steps slowed. A mix of surprise and hesitation crossed his face. Emily noticed, her smile faltering just slightly before she lifted her chin, determined not to let it show. Jake's heart raced. He hadn't been told about this. For a second, he didn't know what to say or how to act. Emily broke the silence first. "You must be Jake," she said warmly, her voice calm and confident. Her tone disarmed him. Jake instantly felt foolish for hesitating. "Yeah, that's me," he replied, forcing a chuckle. "Sorry, I didn't expect—" She finished his sentence softly. "Didn't expect wheels." Her teasing smile made him laugh, easing the tension. "Well, it's my best ride," she added, her humor light and quick. The awkwardness melted away. Jake pulled a chair beside her, smiling genuinely now. As the evening went on, they talked about everything: music, childhood memories, dreams, and favorite foods. Emily had a spark that Jake hadn't seen in anyone for a long time. She told him about her accident at 16 that left her paralyzed, and how she had spent years learning to be independent again. "It's not about walking," she said. "It's about living." Her strength touched something deep in Jake. He realized she wasn't someone to be pitied. She was someone to be admired. Jake found himself forgetting the wheelchair entirely. He watched her eyes light up when she laughed, the way she tilted her head when she listened, the way her words carried both pain and courage. Emily asked him about his work, and he told her how fixing cars made him feel alive. "Machines don't judge," he said. "They just need care." Emily smiled softly. "Maybe people are like that too. Sometimes they just need care, not judgment." Her words stayed with him, echoing long after. When their coffee cups were empty and the cafe began to close, neither wanted the evening to end. Outside, the street was quiet, lit by the soft glow of street lamps. Jake offered to walk her to her car. "I drove here myself," she said proudly, pointing to a modified sedan. Jake couldn't hide his amazement. "You drive?" "Of course," she laughed. "I'm a Texas girl." "Wheels are my wings." He grinned, helping her to the car door, impressed by her independence and spirit. Before she left, Emily looked at him and said, "Thank you for not walking away." Her words were simple but filled with meaning. Jake felt something shift in his chest, a mixture of guilt and admiration. "I wouldn't have missed this for the world," he said honestly. She smiled one last time before driving off, leaving him standing there in the golden glow of streetlight, his heart strangely full. He didn't know what this feeling was, but it was warm and real. That night, lying on his bed, Jake replayed every moment of the evening in his mind. The way Emily spoke about her life, the way she didn't let her disability define her, the quiet strength in her eyes, it all made him see the world differently. He realized how quick people were to judge, to assume. But Emily had shown him that beauty wasn't in perfection. It was in resilience. He felt inspired, humbled, and maybe, just maybe, a little in love. The next morning, he woke up earlier than usual. The shop felt different, quieter. He couldn't stop thinking about her laugh and the way she looked at life. He sent her a simple text, "Had a great time last night. Maybe we could do it again." Hours later, his phone buzzed. Her reply read, "I'd love that. Next time, I'll pick the place." Jake smiled, feeling hope rise inside him. He didn't know what was ahead, but one thing was certain. This wasn't just another blind date. It was the beginning of something real. A week after their first meeting, Jake and Emily kept texting daily. Their conversations were effortless, filled with laughter, teasing, and moments of genuine connection. Jake couldn't believe how easily she fit into his life. One afternoon, Emily suggested they meet again. "There's a small pier near the lake," she texted. "It's quiet and beautiful at sunset." Jake agreed instantly. He wanted to see her smile again, to hear her voice instead of reading it on a screen. Something about her drew him in, her courage, her humor, her calm acceptance of life's imperfections. Saturday arrived with a soft golden light. Jake finished work early, cleaned up, and drove to the lakeside pier. The breeze carried the scent of pine and water. Emily was already there, sitting near the railing, her wheelchair beside a wooden bench. She wore a simple blue dress, and the sunlight made her hair shimmer. Jake walked up smiling. "You always beat me to it," he joked. Emily grinned. "Maybe you're just slow." The easy banter between them erased any awkwardness. They sat together, watching the ripples in the water. For a while they talked about everything: favorite songs, places they wished to travel, dreams they never spoke aloud. Emily confessed she used to love hiking before the accident. "The view from the top of a mountain feels different," she said softly. "It makes you feel small, but in a good way." Jake looked at her and said, "Then we'll find another view, one that doesn't need climbing." She turned to him, touched by his words. No one had ever said something so simple yet so kind. As the sun began to dip, dark clouds started to roll in. A cool wind swept across the pier, making the water tremble. Emily frowned. "Looks like rain." Jake shrugged. A little rain never hurt anyone. But moments later the sky opened up. Heavy raindrops poured down, drenching everything. People nearby ran for shelter. Jake grabbed his jacket, trying to cover Emily, but her wheelchair wheels began to sink into the soft, wet ground. She tried to move, but the wheels spun uselessly. "It's stuck," she said, frustration creeping into her voice. Without hesitation, Jake knelt beside her. "Hold on," he said firmly, his hands gripping the slippery metal frame. Rain poured down his face as he pushed, but the mud clung tight. Emily's anxiety rose. She hated feeling helpless. "Jake, just go," she said, her voice trembling. "You'll get soaked." But Jake ignored her, pushing harder until his boots slipped. "Not leaving you," he said, through gritted teeth. Finally, he lifted the chair slightly, muscles straining, and managed to pull it free. Emily gasped, tears mixing with rain. He was completely drenched, breathing hard but smiling. He wheeled her under a small wooden shelter nearby. The rain drummed loudly on the roof, echoing like a heartbeat. Jake knelt beside her again, brushing wet strands of hair from her face. "You okay?" he asked softly. Emily nodded, unable to speak. Her throat tightened with emotion. "You didn't have to do that," she whispered. Jake gave a gentle smile. "I wanted to." His words carried warmth, no pity, just care. For the first time in a long while, she felt safe. Not because someone rescued her, but because someone truly stayed. Minutes passed as they sat in silence, watching the rain. Jake took off his jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders. "You're freezing," he said. Emily laughed faintly. "You're worse," he grinned. "I'm built for bad weather." That made her smile wider. The storm outside seemed distant now, compared to the quiet storm inside her chest. She'd met many people who pitied her, avoided her, or treated her differently. But Jake looked at her like she was whole, like the chair didn't matter. For her, that was something rare and beautiful. As the rain softened to a drizzle, Jake stood and looked toward the horizon. "You know," he said, "when I was younger I used to hate rain. I thought it ruined everything, but now I think it's just nature's way of slowing us down." Emily tilted her head, listening. "You think this was meant to happen?" she asked. "Maybe," he said with a shrug. "Some moments aren't planned, they're just right." She smiled again, her heart swelling with a feeling she hadn't known in years. Something pure, something new. Before they left, Jake made sure her chair was cleaned and working properly. He even used a towel from his truck to dry the wheels. Emily watched him silently, her chest tightening with gratitude. No one had ever cared this much about her comfort. When they reached her car, she looked up and said, "You really are something else, Jake." He laughed lightly. "Good or bad?" She replied softly, "Unexpectedly good." He smiled at that. She reached for his hand. There, fingers brushing, a spark of connection, fragile yet strong. That night, Emily sat by her window, watching the moonlight shimmer on the rain-soaked street. Her mind replayed every moment of the evening, the struggle, his determination, his laughter in the storm. She realized Jake wasn't like others. He didn't look at her with sympathy but with admiration. He made her feel seen, not as a woman in a wheelchair, but as a woman worth knowing. Jake, on the other hand, lay in bed smiling to himself. He didn't fully understand what was happening, but one thing was clear. He didn't just want to fix her wheelchair. He wanted to be part of her world. Weeks passed, and Jake and Emily's bond deepened. They met often, sometimes for coffee, sometimes for long drives through the countryside. Jake had grown attached to her strengths, her humor, and the quiet courage she carried every day. But one evening, after dropping her home, he noticed how much effort she had to put into moving her wheelchair up the ramp. The wheels struggled against uneven ground, and her arms trembled slightly from exhaustion. That night, Jake couldn't sleep. He lay awake thinking, "There has to be something I can do." His mechanic's mind began to turn with purpose. The next day at the auto shop, Jake skipped his lunch break. He pulled out sketches, bolts, wires, and parts that most mechanics wouldn't even think of using for anything but cars. His co-workers teased him, asking what crazy project he was working on. He smiled and said, "Something special." Every night after work he stayed late, welding, adjusting, testing. He wasn't just building a machine, he was building freedom. For Emily, he wanted her to feel unstoppable no matter where she went. Meanwhile, Emily noticed Jake becoming a little distant. He still texted, but sometimes late, sometimes short. She wondered if she'd said something wrong. One evening she called him. "Everything okay?" she asked. Jake smiled on the other end, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Yeah, just busy with work," he said, hiding the truth. "I promise I'll make it up to you." She laughed softly. "You'd better. I miss our long talks." Jake's heart softened. "Soon," he said quietly, glancing at the half-finished chair gleaming under the garage light. 2 weeks later, Jake finally completed his project. It wasn't just any wheelchair, it was a masterpiece, built with a lightweight aluminum frame, strong motor support, all-terrain tires, and custom controls designed perfectly for Emily's hands. It could glide smoothly on grass, sand, and even uphill slopes. Jake tested it himself again and again until he was sure it was perfect. As he looked at his creation, a tear welled in his eye. He wasn't sure why. Maybe pride, maybe love, maybe both. He only hoped she'd see what it truly meant. He called Emily that weekend and asked her to meet him at the same pier where they'd been caught in the rain. She hesitated at first. It was still muddy from the last storm, but Jake insisted gently. "Trust me," he said. When she arrived, Jake was waiting with a large cover draped over something beside his truck. "What's that?" she asked, curious. Jake smiled nervously. "Something I've been working on." She laughed. "You? Working on something?" "I'm shocked," he grinned. "Just wait." Slowly he pulled off the cover. Emily's eyes widened. Before her stood a sleek, silver wheelchair, modern, beautiful, unlike anything she'd ever seen. The sunlight reflected off its polished frame. She stared at it speechless. "Jake, what is this?" He rubbed the back of his neck, shyly smiling. "It's yours. I built it. Thought maybe you deserved something that could take you anywhere you wanted to go." Emily's hands trembled as she reached out to touch it. "You made this for me?" she whispered. Jake nodded, his voice soft. "You've done more for me than you know. I just wanted to give something back." Tears filled Emily's eyes as she tested the chair. It moved so smoothly that it felt like gliding. She turned, smiling through her tears. "Jake, it's perfect." He laughed, relief washing over him. "I was hoping you'd say that." Someone nearby, an older couple walking by, noticed the scene and began recording it on their phone. Emily laughed joyfully as the chair rolled over sand and small rocks effortlessly. The video captured her excitement, her laughter, and Jake's quiet pride. Neither of them knew that the simple moment would soon touch millions of hearts. That evening, Emily posted the clip online with the caption, "He didn't just fix my chair, he fixed the way I see people." Within hours, it went viral. Comments flooded in from across the country, people calling it the most genuine act of love, others saying it gave them hope. News channels picked it up, showing the video under headlines like, "Mechanic builds miracle wheelchair for his girlfriend." Jake's small-town garage became famous overnight. Reporters came by asking for interviews. But Jake always said the same thing. "It wasn't a big thing. I just cared." Emily and Jake's lives changed after that. They were invited to events, charities, and interviews. But for them, the best moments were still the quiet ones, sitting by the lake, laughing, holding hands. Emily once told him, "You didn't just give me a new chair, you gave me a new life." Jake smiled, replying, "You gave me the same." Their bond became stronger, built on kindness, patience, and shared hope. It wasn't about perfection. It was about showing up again and again when it mattered most. Years later, Emily became an advocate for accessibility and technology for people with disabilities. She often told their story in her speeches, mentioning Jake's gift not as an act of pity, but of partnership. "He didn't see a girl in a wheelchair," she'd say. "He saw me." Jake still worked at his shop, though now he also built custom wheelchairs for others. Together, they turned a single act of love into a movement of compassion. In a world often blinded by appearances, Jake and Emily proved that true love doesn't see limitations. It builds bridges over them. Sometimes love doesn't arrive the way we expect. It finds us when we choose to see beyond limits. Jake didn't just fix a wheelchair. He healed a heart. Emily's story touched millions, reminding the world that real love isn't about perfection, it's about connection. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because kindness has a way of coming back.